Want to recap that this is a third of 3 sermons on the Christmas and family, how different family dynamics interplay with different parts of the Christmas story. If you missed any of the other 2 sermons, catch up online. A couple of weeks ago we talked about gifting and the dynamics and the things that happen around that. Last week we talked about the power of adoption, and today I want to get started by relaying to you something that happened to me August of last year, on a Thursday night, to be specific. I'm having a good time with my bowling team from this church. We're just enjoying ourselves out at the lanes when I get a text from my 15-year-old daughter, and it went exactly this way. Dad, this dog came into the garage while Mom was working. He just stayed with her. She thought he was a neighbor's dog who'd go back home, but he didn't. When I got home, we took him up the street looking for the owner. We met the owner, who was in a car looking for him. She thanked us. She also said that they were looking for a nice home for the dog because there was a new baby in the family and they could not give the dog the attention that he deserved. Dad, what do you think? And along with this text was this picture. Yeah, that's what I did. So after a few days, Jake the Beagle became part of the Weeks family. More specifically, after $1,902.56 in vet bills, kennel fees, and dog food, he is really an embedded part of the Weeks family, but who's counting? Seriously, he is a really cute, adorable, being a beagle, neurotic and stubborn canine. And to bring him into the family meant a lot of messiness, right? I mean, that happens in a family, that you add a different ingredient and then there are different time schedules, different rituals, different things happen. And I say this all to you because when we talk about a blended family especially, we're talking about messiness. Families are messy anyway, but especially when you add the word half or step before the titles mother, father, brother, sister. It just happens. Suddenly there are these new people here, and there are stresses with finances, with emotions, with physical spaces, and there's no clear-cut way of handling these things. My father, from his first marriage, had 2 children. They were quite a bit older than me. I have a half-sister and a half-brother. My half-sister I was quite close to until she passed away. My half-brother I haven't talked to in over 20 years. It's just the way it is. It's simply a fact that more and more, and probably half the families I'm talking to here, are of the blended variety. Here's what Michael said in an upper room devotion. I am a father of 8 children in a blended family. My wife and I both serve as step-parents to children from previous marriages. Being a step-parent is often a tough and thankless job. We have both heard words like, "You're not my daddy," or "I don't have to listen to you." Welcome to the messiness of a family. And when I heard, "You're not my daddy," I have to say, I thought instantly of the passage that Tim is just about to read to you. The passage of when Jesus, at 12, basically said that very thing. Please, in honor of the gospel, would you stand?
Each year, his parents went to Jerusalem for the Passover festival. When he was 12 years old, they went up to Jerusalem according to their custom. After the festival was over, they were returning home, but the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem. His parents didn't know it. Supposing that he was among their band of travelers, they journeyed on for a full day while looking for him among their family and friends. When they didn't find Jesus, they returned to Jerusalem looking for him. After 3 days, they found him in the temple. He was sitting among the teachers, listening to them and putting questions to them. Everyone who heard him was amazed by his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were shocked. His mother said, "Child, why have you treated us like this? Listen, your father and I have been worried. We've been looking for you." Jesus replied, "Why were you looking for me? Didn't you know that it was necessary for me to be in my Father's house?" But they didn't understand what he said to them. Jesus went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. His mother cherished every word in her heart. Jesus matured in wisdom and in years, and in favor with God and with people.
You may be seated. Now, get in your mind's eye the picture that Tim just painted in that passage. Mary and Joseph have given up a lot to be the parents, the mother and the stepdad of Jesus. They have risked their lives. They disrupted their plans. They had their plans disrupted. They risked social shame. They were chased by Herod. They had to take extra work. Joseph had to work extra hard because there's another mouth to feed. They've sacrificed a lot over these 12 plus years. And now, in the temple, after Jesus has basically run away without telling them, Jesus turns to the parents, and just imagine he's turning to Joseph, and he says, "You're not my daddy. I am in my father's, my real father's house. He has visitation rights. I'm with him now, right here. Didn't you know I needed to be dad?" Well, that's pretty harsh, isn't it? It's pretty cruel if you look at it that way. But I think if we take a step back and really dig into the text, dig into that story, we might be surprised with what we find, and we actually might find something a lot more positive than the way I just laid it out. And it all centers around that curious phrase, "Didn't you know that I needed to be in my Father's house?" Now, the word for house in Greek is oikos, and that is the base of words such as ecumenical, such as in a big house with many rooms, different religions, ecumenical, oikos. But that word is not used in this translation that has, "Don't you know I must be about my Father's house?" No. The literal translation of the Greek is, "Didn't you know I needed to be about the things of my Father?" About the things of my Father. The King James Version has it the most accurate when the King James Version of it says, "Didn't you know I needed to be about my Father's business?" And that, to me, makes a lot more sense when you look at that understanding of the Greek, of that text. Because right now, it signifies that Jesus is about to start a new phase of his life. The Father's business now is for Jesus to begin preparing for his destiny, to begin preparing for the life of the Messiah, the one who would change the world, the one who would reconcile the world to God. This was now about the Father's business. It's starting, I'm 12, I'm beginning to be an adult. And all of this begs the question, well, if this was the Father's business to prepare the child now to be a man and the Messiah, what was the Father's business before Jesus was 12? The Father's business was this: to make a family that would nurture and nourish this child so that he could grow up to this phase of his life and become a man. It was the Father's business to make a solid, blended, if you will, family. And we look back at the totality of the birth narratives and of Jesus' early life, we can see how the Father really put together the blended family. For one thing, we can see that the Father, God the Father, started by adding this strong ingredient of commitment. God committed God's self to a new venture, never done before, never done since in the history of humanity, of God becoming flesh. God committed through thick and thin to do that, and God chose two particular people, special people, to join him in this committed relationship. Just as Branch Rickey for the old Brooklyn Dodgers in the 40s chose Jackie Robinson for breaking the color barrier in Major League Baseball, and Mr. Rickey could have chosen maybe some other African-American athletes who were better than Jackie, but he chose Jackie because Jackie had the grit to stay committed to breaking the barrier. God chose Mary and Joseph because they had the grit to stay committed through thick and thin for this business that God was about. And that's what it takes. Because just as legendary as you know, the trials and tribulations of Mary and Joseph, through the social stigma, through the financial stigma or difficulty, through the physical violence, through everything, they stayed committed to the course. And Joseph, the stepfather, was there just as a father to the boy. The base of the blended family especially is just like the base of any family. It starts with commitment to make the home a haven of blessing and a place of peace as the marriage ritual goes. But then something is added to commitment, and that is patience. Because God patiently got all the ingredients together to form that family, and God worked with that family through the days and the nights and the weeks and the months and the years and the ebbs and the flows of what it would be to have a family that could have been very dysfunctional. Holy Family had all the ingredients of a good dysfunctional family. I mean, for one thing, you had the Son of God in it. That would be a bit disruptive. Are you going to discipline the Son of God? I'd like to see you try. Then you had the fact that Joseph was the stepdad, yeah. Then you had the fact that there were siblings. A couple of weeks ago, we had these three great young actors talking about what it would have been like to be Jesus' brothers, growing up with him. And in the passage that Tim read, where were the siblings? They were left in this caravan to go on to Nazareth while mom and dad had to go back and take care of Jesus. Can you imagine the conversations they had? It wasn't sweet, I can tell you that. They had to work through that messiness. But they had the patience to do it because they understood something that we all have to understand. No matter whether we're single, married, in a blended family, regular family, whatever. It is this. They understood, I believe, and this is part of the gospel, that no one is as good as they are in their best of times and the best things they do, nor are they as bad as they are in the worst things they ever do. People are people in process. And the beauty of a family that is committed to making this work, especially when you have steps and halves involved, is to understand that there is a new adventure ahead where each person now coming together has the possibility of becoming more than they ever have been before in terms of knowledge and relationships and love and character, because now they're in a new situation with new possible potential and dreams. That's the Christian view of it. There's always something. You're never as good as the best times and never as bad as your worst times. And to understand that helps you get through those arguments so that you can look back and see the growth a week, a month, a year, years later. Patience gets you through the times. And finally, and maybe one of the most important things that we see God doing in God's business of getting a family together, blending it so it's a strong base, is that God was very, very creative. Why in the world did God throw angels and shepherds in to Jesus' birthday? He could have been born just as well without. Oh, that God is creative. He's fun-loving, and he knew it would be great. He knew it would be something they could talk about and would for years to come, along with the wise men, remember? And the flight from Egypt, well, they had travels, that's for sure. And they would talk in months and years hence about the angels and the shepherd and the wise men and the travels they took together. And I'm sure, this is not in the Bible, but I'm sure God threw something special in about the birth of each of their children so they wouldn't be left out. Don't quote me on that. Don't quote me on that. But that's probably what happened. And they would talk about it. All the events, the travels. And is that not part and parcel of what a family, but especially a blended family, must do? Honoring the past, but maybe starting a new ritual. Weekly pizza, movie, bowling, whatever. Or taking trips where no one else has been before to share new adventures. And all of those new adventures, all the creativity that you put into that family pays dividends in bonding you together and those stories and those tales that you can tell for generations to come. You know, when I wrote this part of the sermon, I got to that, I became a bit introspective and reflective myself. Because when I was 4, just turned 4, my mother died. I was just about 8 when my dad remarried. I never called the woman he married mother. She was mom. My mother was in the grave. This woman was now in our house. But I liked her and loved her because she cared for me and did what a mother would do. But she was mom, you see. She was married to Dad for 25 years, and then she passed away. She'd had kids herself before her husband died, and they were quite a bit older, and she had grandkids. And at the funeral, one of the grandkids and I were talking, and she said, "You know, your mom really loved you. That's why she had red hair." And that's a curious thing to say. So I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "You didn't know?" "Know what?" "No. Your mom had dark hair all her life, but when she married your dad, she knew that your mother had red hair, and so she dyed her hair, hoping that it would be easier for you to accept her into the family." And I was stunned. She changed her appearance for 25 years, and I never knew it. So much did she want to be part of my family. And I never called her mother. I would now. For God so loved the world that God dyed God's hair red to become part of our family. Let us have the grace to eliminate the word step in half in front of the sacred names of mother, father, brother, and sister. Let us within our family have the commitment, the patience, the creativity. For those 3 things together are what love is all about in a family.